Okay, welcome Curtis and Adrian, welcome. So
Hey guys.
let's get started, please. So if we can do our opening prayers, it'll be good. And then we can get into our recitations.
Absolutely.
So Debbie, please carry on.
Let's begin by taking several deep cleansing breaths. Relax, release, bring your mind home. And as you scan your body and relax any tension you find today, try fine-tuning your awareness to places you might not normally pay attention to, but hold stress, such as your eyelids or eyelashes, your earlobes, and your tongue. Relax tension and assume your meditation posture. Then release any mental and emotional baggage from the day, any speed and aggression. And bring your mind home in an attitude of spaciousness, simplicity, and non-grasping. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, May I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness in the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering in the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. And may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow, and may they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion.
Thank you all for being here tonight. Does anybody have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about? Now's always a good time at the beginning to bring anything up that you have. One thing I would like to talk about just a little bit is, this life that we have. Some people might regard this life as a gift. Other people might regard this life as a punishment. Likewise, future lives we might think of as gift, or we might think of as punishment. The point is that if we are doing good things, that we are receiving good benefits, and that we're helping people, we help people, and that in turn helps ourselves. So we have lives to come. We've had many lives before. We have this life now, and then we have many lives to come. But if we look at those lives, if we think of those lives as opportunities to help other people, but by helping those other people, we're actually practicing, we're doing the things that we're learning about now. So we should think of life as a gift. There are people who think of it as punishment because they've done terrible things and they wind up in the three lower realms, the animal realm, the hungry ghost realm, or the hell realms. And it's not to say that they are completely in those realms, but they have a strong proclivity for feeling the suffering of those particular realms, because these realms are the human realm, or the psychophysical drama of being in these six realms. So it's important to have this mindfulness, and that what we are doing when we go into the Bardo, when we enter into the Bardo of reality, that it gives us an opportunity to be liberated. But and most of us are going to wind up being reborn again, and hopefully we're reborn as a human being, is what we really want to be. So to think of it in terms of being able to help other beings then gives us a new purpose, or gives us a motivation for entering into the Bardo Thodol and understanding all these different aspects of the Bardo Thodol, and being able to recognize and accept and be joyful that what we're going to do is that we're going to be helping other beings. So I think it's an important thing to remember. So if anybody has any comments about that, I'd love to hear them. But I hope that's helpful to everyone. Okay, so to get tonight, we're going to talk about day 4 in the Bardo of reality. We're going to talk about the Padma family, and if there's time, we'll talk about the Karma family. But we'll start by setting our motivation. So these motivations are very important, and you may say, well, this is all redundant. We've been over this many times and so on. But I think the more that we do it, the more habitual it feels to us in terms of aligning ourselves with the vibration of what our motivation is for this. So our purification is key for this. So we want to do the purification, then we want to do the aspirational prayer for assistance, and then we want to do the recitation after death, and then we'll do the day for the Padma family, or the Padma family. So turn to page 14. Okay. So let's see. So Michelle, can you do, can you recite tonight?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, good. Michelle, will you recite then page 14, including the small print of the translation of the mantra there, and
Okay.
then if you will actually recite 14 and 15 down to the mantra, and then I'll recite the mantra if that's okay.
Okay.
And then page 16, Dan, will you recite, oh no, 16 I'm going to recite. So then the next page is, the next page is 67. So Dan, will you recite page 67? Let me get to that, see that. So 67. And then Curtis, will you recite page 68 and 69? And that needs to be recited 3 different times. So Adrian, will you recite page 67? And then French, will you recite page 68 and 69?
What did you want me to do, Lance?
I thought I asked you to do page 67.
I think you need to, I got confused, I think.
I'm page 67, Lance.
Adrian's page 67?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Then Curtis, you were page 68 and 69.
Okay, that's what I thought.
All right. Then French, will you recite page 67? And then Barbara, will you recite page 68 and 69? And then that is 3 times, I think. Then
If you're getting 3, I think it's still confused for me anyway. Do you, want to, I don't know what we're doing. I'm confused now.
all right, let's start over. Okay. Okay, so we started off with Michelle was going to read the opening prayer, was going to read the purification prayer. Okay. And then we had Dan was going to read part of that after that. And then Adrian was going to read, Adrian was going to read page 68. Is that right?
67.
67. And then
You
Curtis
said
was
me,
going to read,
68 and 69.
right. Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to do it 3 times?
No, you're going to do it once.
Okay.
French, if you will recite page 67.
Oh.
And then Barbara, will you recite page 68 and 69? Gary, will you recite page 67? And then Katie, will you recite page 68 and 69? That's Ohio Kate. Okay. So then page 70. Tom, will you recite page 70, please? And then page, wait a minute, sorry, page 76. Tom, page 76. Page 76. And then Jane, will you recite page 77? Jerry, will you recite page 78? And the prayer that continues on to page 79, if you'll recite that prayer 3 times. It starts on page 78 and goes over to page 79. And then Kate T, can you recite, please? If you will recite page 79, the rest of 79, and you can recite page 80, 79 and 80. And then Michael, will you read page 81, including day 1? And then Debbie, will you recite page 82? And then, let me see. So John, were you reciting something?
You want me to do 83?
I'm not doing it.
Yeah, will you do page 83? And then Dan, will you do page 84?
84.
Yeah. And let me see, then 84, then 85 will be Adrian, please. And then Michelle at page 86. Then Barbara, page 87. Then Gary, page 88. Curtis, page 89. French, page 90. Then Jane, page 91. Jerry, page 92. Tom, page 93, and that needs to be repeated 3 times. And then page, so page 93 over to where it starts with day 4, and then I'll take day 4. Okay, so if everybody can do that, if you took some notes, would be great. And please begin.
Om Ahum Bodhicitta Mahasukha Jana Datu Om Lulu Lulu Hum Yo Hum. From the field of reality's expanse, uncreated and pure, within a celestial palace, which is a seminal point of light, pure, unceasing, and radiant, through the natural expressive power of one's own mind, uncontrived and empty. Intrinsic awareness, radiant and empty, arises in the form of Vajrasattva, seated upon a bejeweled throne adorned with lotus, sun, and moon cushions. Vajrasattva is white, radiant, with one face, 2 arms, and a smiling countenance. The right hand holds a Vajra at the heart, symbolizing the union of awareness, of absolute wisdom and emptiness. The left hand supports a bell resting on his hip, symbolizing the union of wisdom, appearances, and emptiness. And the head is adorned with a garland of perfect Buddhas, representing the 5 enlightened families of those gone to bliss. Thus, Vajrasattva manifests in the form of the Buddha body of perfect resource, exquisitely adorned with silks and jewels, seated in the posture of royal ease, with the right leg extended and the left drawn in. Radiating at the heart is the seed syllable, Hum, surrounded by the 100-syllable mantra.
Om Vajra Sattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajra Sattva Teno Padristadre Doma Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sitsa Me Sitsantriya Kuru Hong Ha 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 ho Bhagawan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bawa Mahasamaya Satwaha. Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tenopa Dristadre Do Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara karma sutsa me sitsan triya kuru hong ha 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 ho bhagavan Sara tada gata bajra mame munsa bajri bhava mahasamaya satwaha Om Bajra Satwa Samaya Manupalaya Bajra Satwa Tanopa Dristadre Do Me Bawa Suto Kayo Me Bawa Supo Kayo Me Bawa Anuraktu Me Bawa Sara Siddhi Me Prayatsa Sara Karma Sutsa Me Sitsan Triya Kuru Hong ha 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 ho bhagavan Saratada Gata Bajra Mame Munsa Bajri Bhava Mahasamaya Satwaha. Next was page 67.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of the living beings, imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love. Come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept these displayed and visualized offerings. O compassionate ones, as you are the fountain of all-knowing, pristine cognition of loving compassion, of effective activity, and of a power to grant refuge beyond conception, come to this place. Oh, compassionate ones, this human being, Garrett, is leaving the world and journeying to another shore. He is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death. Suffering deeply, he is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without a companion. His perception of this life is fading away. He is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into an unfathomable abyss. Entering the thick forest of doubt, he will be driven on by the potency of past actions. He will be entering a great wilderness, born
Away on a great ocean and driven on by the vital winds of past actions. He will be moving in a direction where there is no firm ground, entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces, and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror upon meeting the executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. In accordance with his past actions, powerless to resist, he may even yet again be entering the realms of rebirth. Time has come, and he has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving his dear friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu Sukraman, who has no refuge. Protect her, be her companion, defend her from the great darkness of the intermediate state, turn back the great hurricane of past actions, protect her from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue her from the long and dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be unsparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to her. Do not allow her to be expelled into the 3 kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Bodhisattvas and Buddhas, for the sake of this person, Rikibu Sukraman, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow this sentient being to fall into the power of negative past actions. Oh, three precious jewels, protect us from the sufferings of the intermediate state.
Aspirational prayer calling to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas for assistance. Recite each day, O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of living beings, imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love, come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept this displayed and visualized offerings, O compassionate ones, as you are the fountain of all-knowing, pristine cognition, of loving compassion, of effective activity, and of a power to grant refuge beyond conception. Come to this place. O compassionate ones, this human being, Rikibu, Vincent Gyatso, is leaving this world and journeying to another shore. He is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death. Suffering deeply, he is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without companion. His perception of this life is fading away. He is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into an unfathomable abyss. Entering the thick forest of doubt, he will be driven on by the potency of past actions. He will be entering a great wilderness. Born
away on a great ocean and driven on by the vital winds of past actions. He will be moving in a direction where there is no firm ground, entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces, and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror upon meeting the executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. In accordance with his past actions, powerless to resist, he may even yet again be entering the realms of rebirth. A time has come when he has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving his friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu, Barbara, who has no refuge. Protect her from and be her companion. Defend her from the great darkness of the intermediate state. Turn back the great hurricane of past actions. Protect her from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue her from the long and dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be unsparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to her. Do not allow her to be expelled into the three kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of this person, Rikibu, Barbara, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow this sentient being to fall under the power of negative past actions. O three precious jewels, protect us from the sufferings of the intermediate states. Om Ahom.
Aspirational prayer calling to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for assistance. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas abiding in the 10 directions, refuge of living beings, imbued with compassion, imbued with knowledge, imbued with clear vision, and imbued with love, come to this place by the power of your compassion and accept these displayed and visualized offerings. O compassionate ones, as you are the fountain of all-knowing, pristine cognition, of loving compassion, of effective activity, and of a power to grant refuge beyond conception, come to this place. O Rikibu, Nasim is leaving the world and journeying to another shore. He is being cast off from this world and approaching the great transition of death, suffering deeply. He is without a friend, without a refuge, without a protector, and without a companion. His perception of this life is fading away. He is moving on to another world, entering a dense darkness and falling into an unfathomable abyss. Entering the thick forest of doubt, he will be driven on by the potency of past actions. He will be entering a great wilderness, born
Who was reading page 68 again?
That's Kate from Ohio.
Okay, from, okay, well. she
Sorry, I
said-
wrote down the wrong number. Away on a great ocean and driven on by the vital winds of past actions. He will be moving in a direction where there is no firm ground, entering a great battlefield, being seized by great malevolent forces, and becoming overwhelmed by fear and terror upon meeting the executors of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. In accordance with his past actions, powerless to resist, he may even yet again be entering the realms of rebirth. The time has come when he has no choice but to move on, alone, leaving his dear friends behind. O compassionate ones, grant refuge now to this person, Rikibu Katie, who has no refuge. Protect her, be her companion, defend her from the great darkness of the intermediate state. Turn back the great hurricane of past actions. Protect her from the great fear and terror of the unfailing laws of cause and effect. Rescue her from the long and dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. O compassionate ones, be unsparing in your compassion. Grant assistance to her. Do not allow her to be expelled into the three kinds of inferior existence. Without wavering from your ancient vows, swiftly release the power of your compassion. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, for the sake of this person, Rikibu Katie, be unsparing in your compassion. Do not allow the sentient being to fall under the power of negative past actions. O three precious jewels, protect us from the sufferings of the intermediate state. Om, Ah, Hom.
Part 1, an elucidation of the intermediate state of the time of death and the appearance of the peaceful deities in the intermediate state of reality. Introduction to the intermediate state of reality. O child of Buddha nature, Rikyabu Tam. Listen very intently and without distraction. There are 6 kinds of intermediate state, namely the intermediate state of living or natural existence, the intermediate state of dreams, the intermediate state of meditative stability or concentration, the intermediate state of time of death, the intermediate state of reality, and the intermediate state of consequent rebirth.
Who was reading page 77?
O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jain, during and after death, you will experience 3 intermediate states. The intermediate state of the time of death, the intermediate state of reality, and the intermediate state of rebirth. Of these 3, it was the intermediate state of the time of death which you experienced until yesterday. Although the inner radiance of reality arose during that time, you didn't recognize it. So now, as a result, you have been compelled to wander here, and now you will experience the intermediate state of reality, followed by the intermediate state of rebirth. You must therefore recognize without distraction the instruction and events which I am now going to introduce to you. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jain, that which is called death has now arrived. You are leaving the world, but in this you are not alone. This happens to everyone. Do not be attached to this life. Do not cling to this life.
Here. Even if you remain attached and clinging, you do not have the power to stay. You will only continue to roam within the cycles of existence. Therefore, do not be attached and do not cling. Think of the 3 precious jewels. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jeri. However terrifying the appearances of the intermediate state of reality might be, do not forget the following words. Go forward, remembering their meaning. The crucial point is that through them, recognition may be attained. Alas, now as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, renouncing the merest thought of awe, terror, or fear, I will recognize all that arises to be awareness manifesting naturally of itself, knowing such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. 3 times. Alas, now as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, recognizing the merest thought of awe, terror, or fear, I will recognize all that arises to be awareness manifesting naturally of itself, knowing such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. Alas, now, as the intermediate state of reality arises before me, recognizing the merest thought of awe, terror, or fear, I will recognize all that arises to be awareness manifesting naturally of itself, knowing such sounds, lights, and rays to be visionary phenomena of the intermediate state. At this moment, having reached this critical point, I must not fear the assembly of peaceful and wrathful deities which manifest naturally. Go forward, reciting these words distinctly, and be mindful of their meaning. Do not forget them, for it is essential to recognize with certainty that whatever terrifying experiences may arise, they are natural manifestations of actual reality. O child of Buddha, nature, Ritsibu, Jerry, when your mind and body separate, the pure luminous apparitions of reality itself will arise, subtle and clear, radiant and dazzling, naturally bright and awesome, shimmering like a plain in summer. Do not fear them. Do not be terrified. Do not be awed. They are the natural luminosities of your own actual reality. Therefore, recognize them as they are.
O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jampa Yandrul, from within these lights, the natural sound of reality will resound, clear and thunderous, reverberating like 1,000 simultaneous peals of thunder. This is the natural sound of your own actual reality. So do not be afraid. Do not be terrified. Do not be awed. The body you now have is called a mental body. It is the product of subtle propensities and not a solid corporeal body of flesh and blood. Therefore, whatever sounds, lights, or rays may arise, they cannot harm you, for you are beyond death now. It is enough that you simply recognize the sounds and luminosities to be manifestations of your own actual reality. Know that this is the intermediate state. O child of Buddha nature, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu Jampa Yandrul, if you do not recognize these phenomena to be natural manifestations, whatever meditative practices you may have undertaken whilst in the human world, if you have not previously encountered this present instruction, you will fear the light, you will be awed by the sound, and you will be
terrified by the rays. If you do not now understand the essential point of the teaching, you will not recognize the sounds, the lights, and rays. and you'll continue to roam within the cycle of existence. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Michael, should you have moved on without recognition after having been unconscious for up to 3.5 days, you will awaken from unconsciousness and wonder, what has happened to me? So recognize this to be the intermediate state. At this time, the aspects of the cycles of existence are reversed into their own true nature, and all phenomena are arising as lights and Buddha bodies. Day 1, on the first day of the intermediate state of reality, all space will arise as blue light. At this time, from the central
Buddha field called Pervasive Seminal Point, the transcendent Lord Vairochana will dawn before you, his body white in color, seated on a lion throne, holding in his right hand an 8-spoked wheel, and embraced by his consort, Akasadatvisvari, a blue luminosity, radiant and clear, bright and dazzling, indicative of the pristine cognition of reality's expanse, which is the natural purity of your aggregate of consciousness, will emanate from the heart of Vairochana and his consort, and it will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Together with this luminosity, a dull white light, indicative of the realm of the gods, will also dawn directly before you and touch your heart. At this time, under the sway of negative past actions, you will wish to flee in fear and terror from the bright blue light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. And you will come to perceive the dull white light of the God realms with delight. At this moment, do not be awed by the blue luminosity, which is radiant and dazzling.
Clear and very bright. This is the supreme inner radiance of pristine cognition. Do not be terrified. This is the light ray of the Tathagata, which is called the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. Have confidence in it. Be drawn to it with longing devotion. Pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord Vairochana's compassion. I take refuge in it. For this in reality is the transcendent Lord Vairochana and his consort come to escort you on the dangerous pathway of the intermediate state. This is the light ray of Vairochana's compassion. Therefore, do not delight in the dull white light of the God realms. Do not be attached to it. Do not cling to it. This dull white light is an inviting path created by your own habitual tendencies for deep delusion, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to it, you will roam within the God realms and be drawn into the cycles of existence of the 6 classes of beings. This dull light is an obstruction blocking the path to liberation. Do not look at it. Be devoted to the bright blue light.
I'm sorry, where are we?
84.
What page? What page are
Sorry.
we on?
Sorry, that's where I take off. Blue, bright blue light. Focus intently on the transcendental Lord Vairochana and repeat after me the following aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by the deep-seated delusion, may the transcendental Lord Vairochana draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. May the supreme consort, Akasa, Davas, Sviari, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued. from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated delusion, may the transcendental Lord Vairocana draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. May the supreme consort Akasa, Dasisvari, support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated delusion, may the transcendent Lord Vairocana draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of reality's expanse. May the supreme consort, Akasa Da Sivari, support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha.
By making this aspirational prayer with fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of Vairocana and his consort, and you will attain Buddhahood as the Buddha body of perfect resource in central Buddha field of the dense array, Ganavya. Day 2. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Giljan, Gyaltso, listen without distraction. On the second day, the purity of the entire element water will arise in the form of a white light. At that time, from the eastern Buddha field of manifest joy, Abhirati, the transcendental Lord Akshobhya, Vajrasattva, will dawn before you, his body blue in color, holding in his right hand a 5-pronged Vajra, seated on an elephant throne, and embraced by his consort Buddha Lochana. They are
encircled by two male bodhisattvas, Ksitigarbha and Maitreya, and two female bodhisattvas, Dasya and Pushpa. Thus, 6 Buddha bodies will be shining before you from within a space of rainbow light. A brilliant white light, indicative of the mirror-like pristine cognition, which is the natural purity of the aggregate form, white and dazzling, radiant and clear, will emanate from the heart of Vajrasattva, Akshobhya, and his consort, and it will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Together with this light of pristine cognition, a dull, smoky light indicative of the hell realms will also dawn before you and touch your heart.
At that time, under the sway of aversion, you will wish to turn away in fear and terror from the bright white light and come to perceive the dull, smoky light of the hell realms with delight. At that moment, you should fearlessly recognize the white light, white and dazzling, radiant and clear, to be pristine cognition. Have confidence in it. Be drawn to it with longing devotion. Pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord, Vajrasattva Akshobhya's compassion. I take refuge in it. This, in reality, is Vajrasattva Akshobhya and his consort come to escort you on the dangerous pathways of the intermediate state. This is the light ray hook of Vajrasattva Akshobhya's compassion. Be devoted to it. Do not delight in the dull, smoky light of the hell realms. This dull light is the inviting path of the negative obscurations created by your own deep aversion, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to it, you will fall into the realms of hell, sinking into a swamp of unbearable
suffering from which there will be no immediate opportunity for escape. This dull light is an obstacle, blocking the path to liberation. Do not look at it. Abandon your aversion. Do not be attached to it. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the white light, radiant and dazzling. Focus intently on the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva, Akshobhya, and recite the following aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated aversion, may the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Akshobhya draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the mirror-like pristine cognition. May the Supreme Consort Buddha Lokana support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued.
From the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Gary? Back to you, Gary. Well, I'll do it.
Oh,
as I roam in cyclic existence,
driven by deep-seated aversion, may the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Akshobhya draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the mirror-like pristine cognition. May the Supreme Consort Buddha Lokana support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued.
From the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated aversion, may the transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Akshobhya draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the mirror-like pristine cognition. May the Supreme Consort Buddha Lokana support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued.
From the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. By making this aspiration prayer with fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of transcendent Lord Vajrasattva Akshobhya, and you will attain Buddhahood as the perfect Buddha body, as the Buddha body of perfect resource in the Eastern Buddha field of manifest joy, Abhirati. Day 3. O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Sukraman, listen without distraction. On the third day, the purity of the entire element earth will arise in the form of yellow light. At this time, from the yellow southern Buddha field of the
Glorious Srimat, the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava will dawn before you, his body yellow in color, holding in his right hand a jewel, seated on a horse throne and embraced by his supreme consort, Mamaki. They are encircled by two male bodhisattvas, Akasakarbha and Samantabhadra, and two female bodhisattvas, Malya and Dhupa, thus 6 bodies of space of rainbow light. A yellow light, indicative of the pristine cognition of sameness, which is the natural purity of the aggregate of feeling, yellow and dazzling, adorned by greater and lesser of light, radiant, clear, unbearable to the eyes, will emanate from the heart of Ratnasambhava and his consort and will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Together with the light of pristine cognition, a dull blue light, indicative of the human realm, will also dawn before you and touch your heart.
At that time, under the sway of pride, you will wish to turn away in fear and terror from the bright yellow light, and you will come to delight in the dull blue light of the human realm and feel attachment towards it. At that moment, abandon your fear of the yellow light and recognize it as pristine cognition, yellow and dazzling, radiant and clear. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it in a state of non-activity. Again and again, have confidence in it. Be drawn to it with loving devotion. If you recognize it as the natural luminosity of your own awareness, even though you may feel no devotion towards it and have not recited the aspirational prayer. All the Buddha bodies and light rays will dissolve inseparably into you, and you will attain Buddhahood. If you are unable to recognize the radiance as being the natural luminosity of your own awareness, then pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord Ratnasava's compassion. I take refuge in it. This, in reality, is the transcendent Lord Ratnasahaba come to escort you on the
fearsome, dangerous pathway of the intermediate state. This is the light ray hook of Ratnasambhava compassion. Be devoted to it. Do not delight in the dull blue light of the human realm. This dull light is the inviting path created by your own habitual tendencies for a deep-seated pride, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to it, you will tumble down into the human realm. You will experience the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death, and there will be no intermediate opportunity to escape from the swamp of cyclic existence. This dull light is an obstacle blocking the path to liberation. Do not look at it. Abandon pride. Abandon your habitual tendencies. Do not be attached to the dull blue light. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the yellow light, golden and dazzling. Focus intently and singly-mindedly on the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava and recite the following aspirational prayer.
Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated pride, may the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of sameness. May the supreme consort Mamaki support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated pride, may the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of sameness. May the supreme consort Mamaki support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated pride, may the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of sameness. May the supreme consort Mamaki support me from behind, and thus encircled, may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, be escorted to the level of utterly perfect Buddha. By making this aspirational prayer or fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of the transcendent Lord Ratnasambhava, and you will attain Buddhahood at the Buddha body of perfect resource, the southern Buddha field of the glorious Srimat.
Very good, thank you. So Sandra, you'll get to recite this next one, and Eileen, you will get to recite this next one. So I didn't totally forget you. The pictures move around on the screen, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of them. What I would like to point out to you, I sent an email to everybody that had the pictures of the different deities that I've been showing on the screen, with their names and the associated Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so on. Also, I sent you what I call a mandala frame. So let me see if I can bring that up here. How can I get this frame to come up? 1 second. Okay. There. Okay, so I sent this to you in hopes that you would be able to print this and print several copies for yourself. And this is a great tool to be able to make notes on and be able to organize your thoughts about this, about the Bardo Thodol, about the different deities and so on. So this frame we will use throughout all the teachings that we're going to do, all this exploration of the Bardo Thodol. So it's going to be very useful to us. And like I said, so in the center is the blue is Buddha Shakyamuni, excuse me, Samantabhadra. And here in this white section down below, this is where Vajrasattva Ascobia, his family would be. Here in the yellow would be the Ratnasambhava family, the Ratna family. Here in the red would be the Amitabha family, the Padma family. And here in the green would be the Karma family of Amagog City. So you can see that there are the cardinal directions, and then there are the semi-cardinal or the secondary directions. So we look at the east, we look at the south, the west, and the north, and the southeast, and the southwest, and the northwest, and the northeast. So getting your bearings with all this is really quite important. So it'll help you to visualize what all this is coming together. You can take your notes. So from all these different prayers that we've been reciting now, there are clues as to what should go in here, what they are referring to, and so on. Their names, the consorts, the bodhisattvas, the female bodhisattvas, the male bodhisattvas, and so on like that. Up in this upper corner right here is Vajrasattva. So as I said before, Vajrasattva, it's through Vajrasattva, the purification, that we are going through all of this. And then over here on the left side, you can see that there is a Buddha and a stupa that are superimposed on each other. So we can recognize that the stupa is actually an empirical diagram of a Buddha. So we'll talk more about that later, but you can see what that is. Here in this circle, this sphere at the very top, this is actually where Samantabhadra would go, the Bodhisattva, the Buddha Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha. And then this blue one here would be Varanchana. And this is the chakra wheel, which is the Buddha family. So you can also look in your book. If you've got a copy of the book, the Gourmet Dorje book, and if you look at page 388, 389, this is the appendix. This is the second part of the appendix. And you will see that there is charts there, a chart there that gives different references, different characteristics to all these different deities and so on. So you can make your own notes and so on and begin to assemble, what is going on here. So this is something that I did. I'm going to share with you at the end. I'm going to share with you my mandala that I built to show everybody how this all can go together. But in the meantime, you need to do it yourself. If you really want to study this, if you really want to understand this, this is a very clear technique in being able to do it. Does anybody have any questions or comments about this?
Yeah, Lance, what was
Yes.
that book you referred to again?
It's the Gourmet Dorje book. It's the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is the book from which this root text is coming from.
Okay, got it, thanks.
So basically you're saying that this is the actual map of how the Bardo is going to look like in this different stages, right?
Well, yes, it is an illustration. It is a tool. It shouldn't be taken as the literal Bardo by any means. It shouldn't
Right,
be
right.
taken as literal. It is only a learning tool for ourselves to organize the relationships of the deities in relation to a mandala. And you have to think of the mandala as a three-dimensional object. So we'll talk more about the mandala itself later on.
But
So I hope that answers your question.
it does.
It's not literal.
It does. So, but in the Bardo, what does the west, south, north, east mean?
We'll get to that. Each one represents a continent. When we, in some of the practices that we do, when we make the offerings, when we do the mandala offerings, and we're offering, so we're saying the four continents, and Mount Meru is in the center.
Right.
So we are in the southern continent. We are in the continent of Zambupipa. And so, and then there's three other continents. So I don't have them off the top of my head right this second, but you'll begin to make those associations too. It's all in the book. So we'll come to it as we, explore different parts of these, each of these different chapters and so on.
So actually, these are places that you go in the Bardo. Like,
it's just a learning tool to be able to reference these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas within this Bardo, within the Bardo of reality that is all around us. We are in the Bardo of reality now, but we just don't recognize it that way. So we're in the Bardo of living right now, but we're only seeing one half of it. But once we have experience of being able to transcend into the Dharmakaya, now we see that this Bardo of living is the Bardo of reality as well. So all these, abstract ideas begin to take form, in our minds when we use these tools. Otherwise, they're just, they're very disparate. So using all these illustrations and so on are very, very helpful to organize.
thank you.
You're welcome.
And Lance, could I share that the chart you just referred to in the back of the Guillermo Dorje translation is just really wonderful because just to give two really quick examples, it includes things that are not in the text we're reading, but are really helpful, like physical correspondences in the body, which just really remind you this is in us, coming from us. And then shadings of color, not just white, but conch white, not just blue, but turquoise or beryl blue. And it's not a matter, I've found, of trying to remember the details. It just gives it texture and three-dimensionality. And so I've just really loved that chart, and I've gotten over my usual stumbling blocks of, oh my goodness, I can't remember all the detail. And just having it inspire a feeling of incredible richness and aliveness so that these images don't feel cartoon-like. So I just wanted to share that. At least that's my experience with that chart that otherwise I would look at and think, oh my goodness, how can I possibly grasp all that?
That's great. Thank you very much. Anybody else have a comment or question? Okay, so did everybody receive the email? Is anybody lacking with that? So, and if you have trouble printing this, let me know. I'll mail you, 10 copies of it or something, or you can take it to a printer, Kinko or whatever, and have some copies made or something like that. So it'll be very helpful to you. If you decide not to do it, there's no penalty, but it's just, it's a good tool to have in our understanding of this. Okay, so now we're going to move on to day 4. So day 4 is the the Buddha family, the Padma Buddha family, the family of Amitabha Buddha. So I would like to ask Sandra, would you read page 84, starting with day 4 or 94, read 94 and 95. And then Eileen, would you read page 96 and 97 and 98, or 98 down to where it says day 5? And notice that on page 97, that section needs to be repeated 3 times. So Eileen, will you read that? And then we'll have a discussion about it after that. Okay, everybody following? We're on page 94 and Sandra's going to read first.
O child of Buddha nature, Rikyabu, Trevor King. Listen without distraction. On the 4th day, the purity of the element fire will arise in the form of a red light. At that time, from the red western Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati, the transcendent Lord Amitabha will dawn before you, his body red in color, holding in his right hand a lotus flower, seated on a peacock throne, and embraced by his supreme consort, Pandara Vasini. They are encircled by 2 male bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri, and 2 female bodhisattvas, Gita and Aloka. Thus 6 Buddha bodies will be shining before you from within a space of rainbow light. A red light, indicative of the pristine cognition of discernment, which is the natural purity of the aggregate of perceptions, red and dazzling, adorned by greater and lesser seminal points, radiant, bright, and dazzling, will emanate from the heart of Amitabha and his consort, and will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Do not be afraid. Together with the light of pristine cognition, a dull yellow light, indicative of the realm of anguished spirits, will also dawn before you and touch your heart. Do not delight in the dull yellow light. Do not become attached to it and do not cling to it. At this time, under the sway of deep desire, you will wish to turn away in fear and terror from the bright red light, and you will come to delight in the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits and feel attachment towards it. At this moment, abandon your fear and recognize the red light, bright and dazzling, radiant and clear, to be pristine cognition. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it in a state of non-activity. Have confidence in the radiant red.
Luminosity. Be drawn to it with longing devotion. If you recognize this radiance as the natural luminosity of your own awareness, even though you may feel no devotion towards it and have not recited the aspiration prayer, all the Buddha bodies and light rays will dissolve inseparably into you, and you will attain Buddhahood. If you are unable to recognize the radiance in this way, then pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord Amitabha's compassion. Be devoted to it. Do not run, do not turn away. Should you turn away, the luminosity will accompany you inseparably. Do not be afraid. Do not be attached to the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits. This is the inviting path created by your own habitual tendency for deep-seated desire, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to this dull light, you will fall down into the realm of the anguished spirits. You will experience unbearable suffering of hunger and thirst. This dull light is an obstacle blocking the path to liberation. Do not be attached to it. Abandon your attachment. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the red light, which is radiant and dazzling, and focus intently and single-mindedly on the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his consort, and recite it following aspirational prayer. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on a path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandara Vasini support me from behind, and thus encircle may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandara Vasini support me from behind, and thus encircle may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. Oh, as I roam in cyclic existence driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the Supreme Consort Pandara Vasini support me from behind, and thus encircle may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state, and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. By making this aspirational prayer with fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his consort, and you will attain Buddhahood as the Buddha body of perfect resource in the Western Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so we go back to page 94. So here on the left side of the page, we see a close-up of the main Buddha of Amitabha and of Pandara Vasini and Yab Yum. And then on the right side, then we see the sphere with the two male Buddhas and the two female Bodhisattvas, excuse me, and the two female Bodhisattvas. And here on this slide, we can see all their names. So Amitabha, Pandara, Manjushri, and Avalokiteshvara, Aloka, and Gita. So, it says here in the text, O child of Buddha nature, Rikibu, Kunchok Pema Dorje, listen without distraction. On the fourth day, the purity of the element fire will rise up in the form of red light. At that time, from the red western Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati, the transcendent Lord Amitabha will dawn before you, his body red in color, holding in his right hand a lotus flower, seated on a peacock throne and embraced by his supreme consort, Pandara Vasini. So the element fire. So we've been through the element of the earth was Padmasambhava, and then the element of water was Ascobia. So you can put those down into the mandala frame. In the center, in the blue center, would have been space, would have been the element of space. So now we're talking about the element of fire. And from that is this Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati. So the Buddha field of Amitabha is Sukhavati. So each one of the Buddha fields is mentioned in these prayers. So you can extract that from the text and insert that into the frames. So if we haven't already achieved enlightenment with the other Buddhas at this time, now with Buddha Amitabha, we have this possibility to be able to do that. So he's holding a lotus flower, he's on a peacock throne, and his consort Pandara Vasini. They are encircled by two male bodhisattvas, Avalokiteshvara and Manjushri. So those two names everybody should be quite familiar with. Avalokiteshvara is the bodhisattva of compassion, and Manjushri is the bodhisattva of wisdom. So these two go together. We talked about this so many times, that the wisdom is the loving kindness of all the Buddhas, and and to actualize that wisdom, to actualize that loving kindness, is the compassion. And the compassion here is the method, the way in which this is actualized. So in the big pictures of Avalokiteshvara, you see Avalokiteshvara is standing with 1,000 arms and 1,000 hands, and in each one of his hands he has an eye. So Avalokiteshvara sees all the suffering of all beings and knows how to be able to help those beings with his compassion. So it's very powerful. Amitabha is the Buddha, the natural purity of perceptions in discernment. So what that means is his wisdom is the wisdom of discriminating awareness. That with that wisdom, we know, we choose, we prioritize what it is that we need to pay attention to, and what we can compartmentalize to the margins, to something else that we don't need to pay attention to this right now. But maybe there's something that we really do need to pay attention to. So it's that wisdom of Amitabha that helps us to do that, it allows us to do that. If you've been introduced at all to the POA practices, and the POA practice talks about the transference of consciousness that we go through when we pass, when we die. Our outer breath dies. We stop, our body is not working anymore, but we still have this inner breath that is within ourselves, and we have to eject that. So with the POA, we learn, we practice the ejection of that life force that we have with ourselves through the center channel, through the top of our head, through the crown of our head. And during the POA practice, we visualize that it's Amitabha who is sitting on top of our head with his big toe on the aperture of Brahma, it's called, at the crown of our head, and our life force then is ejected into the big toe of Amitabha and goes into Amitabha's body, and we go into Sukhavati. So Amitabha is there. We use Amitabha in the POA because he is the most accessible. He is the easiest to reach. The Sukhavati is the least complicated of the Buddha fields, of the Buddha realms. And his bodhisattvas of Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara are so pervasive in all the teachings and everything that we do. The meaning of the wisdom and the compassion is so pervasive through all the practices that it becomes so easy for us to be able to follow that. If we chose to, we could replace Amitabha with Ashkobhya, with Varanchana, with Ratnasambhava, Amagog City, whichever of the deities we have a greater affinity to. But until we practice that, and we're really, really comfortable with that, we should visualize the Amitabha. So here, this is the fire, the wisdom fire of Amitabha that we are ejecting our consciousness into. The two female bodhisattvas in the front, you see, is Gita, and she is holding a veena. A veena is a string instrument like a guitar, and she's holding that, and she represents song, the song that we sing. And behind is Aloka. Aloka is holding a lamp, like a butter lamp, a flame, a butter lamp, and she represents light. So along with the wisdom is Aloka, the wisdom fire, the wisdom light. They go together. And then Avalokiteshvara and Gita go together as compassion. The music represents compassion, what it takes to learn how to be able to play an instrument, and what it takes to be able to compose the music, the melodies, and the structure of the music. And so it takes great compassion to be able to do that, great effort to be able to do that. So the song represents the actualization, the result of that compassion. So over here on the right side of the deity, we can see that here is a bundle of flowers that is representative of Avalokiteshvara, the lotus flowers. Here's a bundle of flowers. And over here on the other side is Manjushri, who in his right hand is holding a flaming wisdom sword above his head. And in his left hand, he's holding a bundle of books to represent the Prajna Paramita, the teachings of the Dharma are represented here. So he represents this wisdom, all within this fire, this hot fire that is indicative of this section of the wheel. So you have the mandala frame, so you can insert a lot of this information into that to help you to remember this. So it says, going back to the text here on page 94, at the bottom it says the two female bodhisattvas, Gita and Aloka. Thus, the 6 Buddha bodies will be shining before you from within a space of rainbow light. So here around the circumference of this sphere is a rainbow light. We can see the different color lights here, red, blue, green, and yellow, and white. So now page 95. So it says a red light indicative of the pristine cognition of a discernment. The pristine cognition, remember that is the clear light of discernment, the clear light of Dharmakaya, the clear light of the Rigpa, of the awareness, is this discernment of this wisdom of discriminating awareness, choosing what it is that we are going to focus one-pointed mindfully upon, which is the natural purity of the aggregate of perceptions. So we perceive so many things. There's so many things that we have to think about that come in our mind's eye, so to speak. What is it that we choose? Well, with our discriminating awareness, now we have that wisdom. We precisely focus on the things that we need to at this particular point, or any particular point in our progression along the pathway. So it's the natural purity of the aggregate of perception. So all these things are valid. All these perceptions are good, but they need to be done in a particular order, that this is a progression. So we need to recognize the progression, and the system of the Bardo Thodol, along with all the Dharma teachings, is teaching us how to apprehend and use that system or a group of systems. So it's red and dazzling, adorned with greater and lesser seminal points, radiant, bright and dazzling, will emanate from the heart of Amitabha and his consort, and will shine piercingly before you at the level of your heart with such brilliance that your eyes cannot bear it. Do not be afraid. So this brilliant red light emanating from the heart centers of the Yab and Yom, of the Amitabha and Pandaravasini coming together, is this very powerful red light. And we need to be able to become one with the light, that we become the light, that we recognize this light and we melt with this light. Just as we would have melted with the yellow light from Ratnasambhava, or the blue light from, or the white light, I should say, from Ascobia, or the blue light from Varanchana, that we just melt with it. It's like water being poured into water. So this is why we practice now, so that we are familiar with this, and so that we're not frightened by this light, that we immediately just become the light ourselves. So now the next paragraph says, together with the light of pristine cognition, a dull yellow light, indicative of the realm of the anguished spirits, will also dawn before you and touch your heart. So these anguished spirits, this is the Preta realm, P-R-E-T-A, Preta. And the Pretas are the hungry ghosts. And you heard about these, may have read about these. These beings are characterized as being very fat, very rotund, and they have very small legs, very little feet. They have very small arms and very little hands. And it's very difficult for them to gain any traction, any kind of locomotion, any way to hold on to things. And they have very long tapered necks, and they have very small mouths, and they cannot eat enough or drink enough to satisfy their grotesque round bodies. So they're miserable because they are insatiable. They cannot be satisfied. So we use the analogy of the food and drink as an analogy, but that could be that they are hungry for power, hungry for wisdom, hungry for spirituality, hunger for hatred, anything that you can imagine, that they are insatiable. So we may at times fall into that we feel that way. Maybe we've gone through that, or we know people who are like that, who are insatiable. So this is the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits, those who are insatiable. And because we have experienced this as being an ordinary human being, that it's more comfortable to us than this bright red light, if we're not familiar with the bright red light. So this dull yellow light is more familiar to us, and we might rather go to that. So it says, do not become attached to it, and do not cling to it. At this time, under the sway of deep desire, you will wish to turn away in fear and terror from the bright red light, and you will come to delight in the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits and feel attachment towards it. At this moment, abandon your fear and recognize the red light, bright and dazzling, radiant and clear, to be pristine cognition. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it in the state of non-activity. Have confidence in the red luminosity. So here it says, abide directly. Let your awareness relax and abide directly within it, within the bright red light. In a state of non-activity, we have to give up feeling like we have to do things, that we have to say things, that we have to think things. We just become the light. Then we have confidence in that. And we are able to melt with that light. Have confidence in the radiant red light and the red luminosity. Be drawn to it with longing devotion. If you recognize this radiance as the natural luminosity of your own awareness, even though you may feel no devotion towards it and have not recited the aspirational prayer, all the Buddha bodies and light rays will dissolve inseparably into you, and you will attain Buddhahood. So as we are developing our meditation practices, we are becoming familiar with it. But if we're reading this to someone who has passed and we're guiding them, they may not be familiar with it. So we are trying to evoke this red light within ourselves, within our own heart, and we are transmitting it to our family member or our friend, whomever it is that we are reciting this Bardo Thodol book for, to guide them, and we're sending them this red light that they may see this, and maybe they can recognize and allow themselves to be pulled in by Amitabha. So it says, all the Buddha bodies and light rays will dissolve inseparably into you, and you will attain Buddhahood. So this is being in the Bardo of reality as a mental body. So we prepare for this in our meditations, in our waking state, in the waking, in the waking, in the state of being, the state of living, the Bardo of living, in the meditative Bardo. If you are unable to recognize the radiance in this way, then pray with devotion, thinking, this is the light ray of the transcendent Lord Amitabha's compassion. Be devoted to it. Do not turn away. Should you turn away, the luminosity will accompany you inseparably. Should you turn away, the luminosity will accompany you inseparably. Do not be afraid. In other words, the luminosity is there. You can't turn it off. It's all around you. So it's just a matter of being able to recognize it and more or less using the word surrender to it. Seeing it as your own light. Do not be afraid. Do not be attached to the dull yellow light of the anguished spirits. This is the inviting path created by your own habitual tendencies for deep-seated desire. Desire for all these things that we are insatiable, that we can't be satiated by, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to this dull light, you will fall down into the realm of the anguished spirits. You will experience unbearable suffering of hunger and thirst. So here's an interesting point. This red light is inherent. This red light is there. The yellow light is there. The blue light, these different lights are inherent. And we need to be able to transcend all the things that we fabricate, like this dull yellow light, like the dull white light, like the dull blue light. Those are all fabrications of our relative nature, of our phenomenal nature, of our brain, of our ego. Those are all fabrications, temporary fabrications. But these lights that we're talking about from the Buddhas are innate. They are permanent. They are, that is what we are, that is what we are coming to recognize. This is the inviting path created by your own habitual tendencies for deep-seated desire, which you yourself have generated. If you become attached to this dull light, you will fall down into the realm of the anguished spirits, and you will experience unbearable suffering of hunger and thirst. This dull light is an obstacle blocking the path to liberation. Do not be attached to it. Abandon your attachment. Do not cling to it. Be devoted to the red light, which is radiant and dazzling, and focus intently and single-mindedly on the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his consort, and recite the following aspirational prayer. The key phrase here is single-mindedly. Everything that we are doing with our concentrations, with our contemplations, our meditations, is to develop single-minded focus, single-minded mindfulness. This is what we are working on. So then we recite, oh, as I roam in cyclic existence, driven by deep-seated desire, may the transcendent Lord Amitabha draw me forward, leading me on the path of radiant light, which is the pristine cognition of discernment. May the supreme consort Pandarapasini support me from behind, and thus encircled may I be rescued from the fearsome passageway of the intermediate state and be escorted to the level of an utterly perfect Buddha. By making this aspirational prayer with fervent devotion, you will dissolve into rainbow light in the heart of the transcendent Lord Amitabha and his consort, and you will attain Buddhahood. as the Buddha body of perfect resource in the Western Buddha field of the blissful Sukhavati. So does anybody have questions or comments?
Lance?
Yes.
You talk about some of these bright bright sort of organic colors as being inherent. So they're inherent to the Dharmakaya.
Correct.
And then the dull colors are a product of our manufacture.
Correct. They are part of the desire realm.
Can you explain why that, how they might, like the dull yellow, what might that be a product of? Is that a mixing of different sort of polluted fields or materials or elements, or I mean, how do the colors that blend together to make a gray yellow coordinate with any energies or influences?
Well, on that question, and I think that's come up before, I'm not that great a scholar to be able to really say definitively how those colors come about. You know, they're expressed here in the Bardo Thodol by Padmasambhava. So if there's a meaning to that, I don't have something that I can tell you, but it is something that you can begin to make association with. Just like everything that we see, all these things are all fabricated, and we have conventions that we agree that this is a table and this is the color red and this is a candle and so on. So it's just another temporary appearance that we are using to focus our attention on something within the phenomenal world. So I look at all these things as just tools one way or another. However, these Buddha lights are emanations of the Dharmakaya.
So the Buddha lights are not lights that we would normally see, nor would they be lights that we beings would have an opportunity to try to name.
That's correct.
Whereas the dull lights are those lights that we have normalized and sort of shared together and named together.
That's exactly right. So the Buddha lights, we experience those. And the only thing that we can say about it, that we experience this red light, this red Buddha light. We experience this yellow Buddha light. And with it came, these we try and explain it, but there's no words to explain it.
Yeah, and there's not somebody sitting next to us in the movie theater that we could point and say, look at that. You think that's yeller?
Yeah.
No.
So it's spiritual light. It's a spiritual reality that we are tuning into. So it's beyond our human comprehension. It's beyond our human ability to be able to express it. So it has to be experienced. So I know that's very abstract, but that's
no. I mean that's very helpful, because that's why we're so comfortable with the dull lights, because we've seen them before, because we built them. We sort of manufactured them amongst ourselves to be familiar.
Yeah.
And to use the language. So that, okay.
So what color light is jealousy? What color light is desire? What color light is hatred? and maybe it's a combination of things, but now we're piecing things together where we can start, thinking about these things and understanding these things and not be fooled by these things. Not be tantalized by these things. Somebody else got a comment?
Lance, I wanted to ask, is it your understanding as each of the Buddha families appears that what we have the opportunity of is actually two chances at liberation? The first is associated with recognizing the pristine cognition each time for each of the families. And then the second is the devotional path, because it often seems to be worded as, if you don't recognize, then generate devotion. And so is that how you see it, that there is the opportunity to have that almost instant recognition and liberation? And then if that doesn't happen, still within the experience of that family of Buddhas, there's the chance to, if you're still having that feeling of separation getting in the way, to generate devotion and ride on that tractor beam as you describe it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So yeah.
So yes, and there's many, many opportunities to be liberated. And as you point out, there's this direct light from the deities, from the five Buddha families, but to recognize that means that we've had to develop that within ourselves. We've had to cultivate experience within ourselves to be able to recognize that. But then maybe we haven't experienced that, but we have gone through a process of developing our devotional meditation practices. And maybe we haven't come to that clear light, but yet we will resonate with the idea of these prayers and being able to devotedly, one-pointed, mindfully, devotedly, be able to recognize those lights and allow ourselves to be drawn to those lights through our devotion. So yes. And this is indicative of the peaceful deities. When we get to the wrathful deities are emanations of the peaceful deities. But when we fail to recognize the abilities of the peaceful deities, then the wrathful deities are there, with greater compassion, more powerful, more fierce, to be able to help us to recognize liberation. So when we get to that, we'll see that. So the wrathful deities are in the brain. So all those obscurations are in the brain, and they're blocking up the heart. The heart is where the peaceful deities are. We want to be in the heart, but if the brain is constantly blocking up the heart, then we've got this obstruction. We can't get through it. The wrathful deities and the brain are there to help us to be able to get over those blockages so that we can get into the heart, to the peaceful deities again.
And I have to say, as I'm trying to practice with this, that the peaceful deities actually don't feel all that peaceful to me in a conventional sense, that they feel really, they're serene, but really high voltage. And it's just a whole other level of energy that doesn't really correspond to what I normally think of as peaceful in a kind of comfy, cozy, relaxed kind of way.
Well, I understand that, and you're creating that association like that.
I am, indeed.
And it's not, it's valid. It's that's fine. There may come a time when you are able to transcend that, because it's conceptual.
Lance, I do have a question about what you just mentioned, that mostly the wrathful deities are in the brain. The peaceful deities have a place in the heart. What does this have to do with our physical body?
This is it's a spiritual representation, and we're using the human body because we can relate to that. But it is just an illustration. It's just an appearance. It's just making these associations for ourselves that ultimately we let go. It's just conceptual tools that at some point we don't need the tools anymore. It's another boat to get from one shore to the shore of enlightenment. Once we get to the shore of enlightenment, we don't need the boat anymore.
So when we say that the deities are within us, what is us? Because we always talk about emptiness. Is it our physical?
We are the Buddha.
So we're not talking about our physical body necessarily.
Well, it is manifest in our body, but how much of it is being lived? We have the potential for our body, speech, and mind to become enlightened, but how much of it is? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be inseparable with the enlightenment, with the Buddha, that is already existent within ourselves. And I use the word existent, but is already present within ourself. And the Nundro really speaks to this. If you remember, when we do the multiplying mantras at the end of the Nundro, each time that we do the end of that, and we're saying, Om Ruru Daru Mugi Mugi Soha, Om Ruru Daru Mugi Mugi Soha. We're saying the body, speech, and mind of the peaceful and wrathful deities is the Buddha. And then we say, Dari Dari Bendai Soha, Om Dari Dari Bendai Soha, Om Dari Dari Bendai Soha. We're saying that the body, speech, and the mind of the Buddha is for the benefit of the enlightenment of all beings. That everything that the Buddhas do, everything that the enlightened beings do with their body, speech, and mind is for the enlightenment of all beings. And that's what we're trying to tune into. And then we attain the equipoise, the bliss and the strength of the equipoise.
Now, Lance, since we have the 5 wisdoms and the 4 kayas are already within us, and it seems as though that through practice and meditation, we're trying to recognize these natural.
Yes, and how are we doing that? How do we recognize them? Why is it we're not? Let me rephrase it. Why isn't we're not recognizing them now?
Because of our obscurations.
Correct.
We're trying to purify those obscurations.
Yeah. So our true nature is omnipresent, but it's blocked up by our afflictive emotions and our wisdom obscurations. So that's what we're trying to dismantle. That's what we're trying to overcome, trying to burn away. And then all that's left is our true nature that never goes away, that's indestructible. The Vajra. Is that the point you were making?
Yes, I mean, it seems as though that we always see ourselves as a defiled human, ordinary human being, and trying to rid ourselves of that perception. That's what these teachings are trying to do. And it seems as though, like you said earlier, most of these teachings and the experience that we have to go through, or to recognize these things that can't be done through reading, through scripture. It's got to be realized.
It'll be experienced.
Experienced and realized.
So we're just about out of time. If you have questions or comments and you want to talk about, please write them down. I'll be glad to talk about it, afterwards, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time commitment here. And so right now, if we can, Debbie, if you can put up the aspiration prayer for Sukhavati, because now it's perfectly relevant, because this is the supplication, the brief prayer to be reborn in the blissful pure land of Dewachen. Dewachen is the Tibetan name for Sukhavati, and that is the Buddha field of Buddha Amitabha. So let's recite this, please. Debbie?
You're muted, Debbie.
Your microphone's off.
Emaho. In the center is the marvelous Buddha Amitabha of boundless light. On the right is Avalokiteshvara, the Lord of great compassion. On the left is Vajrapani, the Lord of powerful means. All are surrounded by limitless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Immeasurable peace and happiness is the blissful pure land of Dewachen. When I and all beings pass from samsara, may we be born in Dewachen without taking samsaric rebirth. May I have the blessing of meeting Amitabha face to face. By the power and blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions, may I attain this aspiration without hindrance. Teata pensadria awa bodhanaye soha. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. By this virtue, may I achieve all knowingness by defeating all enemies' confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of suffering. As Manjushri the warrior realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings.
Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. 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 Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. Thank you all very much. If anybody has any questions, I'll be more than glad to talk for a little while.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Debbie.
Thank you, Lance, Debbie.
Welcome.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you
Debbie.
all.
Thanks,
Thank you
Sonia.
all.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
Have a wonderful weekend.
you.